What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Real Talk Real Estate. I'm your host, Mark Cannon, realtor with my home group Real Estate, the owner of the Benchmark Real Estate team here in Phoenix, Arizona. So today, I'm going to be talking through another document. So we talked about buyer broker before and what that new document looks like. And today, we're going to be talking through the new listing document. So when you go to sell your house, you're going to sign something called the exclusive right to sell document. So we're going to talk about that. I've got the redlined version, which is going to show you what's changed. So there's been a lot of different changes. So that way you guys can know what it is you're signing, and you need to know that. And that's what I talk through this for, is that people understand what has changed, how does that impact you, because that is important. These are legal documents. As a realtor, I have to take contract law. So these are important documents, and you need to understand that as a consumer, whether you're selling, buying, whatever it is. And again, if you have more questions on this, you can always reach out to me. I'd love to sit down and talk with you about it. You guys can listen to this on Spotify, you can Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You can watch on YouTube and Spotify. So feel free to look at those, subscribe, share it with your friends. I would appreciate it. So let's get through this document. So I'm going to do a screencast today. So let me change my screen here. All right. So exclusive listing contract, exclusive right to sell, rent. Now, I am not going to read this entire thing, and I'm not going to necessarily go over the rental aspect of it. There are changes with the rental aspect, but I'm not going to go over all of that today. So just want to talk through this. So you're going to see a lot of little changes. Like they're going to add listing in a lot of areas. So it'll be listing broker, stuff like that they're going to add a lot of that. As you can see, listing. You're going to see throughout this document and any document moving forward, stuff is not going to be called commissions anymore. It is now compensation. So it's always going to be called compensation. You're going to see a lot of that change. Listing and compensation are the two biggest ones you'll see a lot more of. So let's talk through just something right here I want to point out, because a lot of people don't understand. When you sign an exclusive right to sell, you can't just fire your agent. And people go, yeah, I can. No, you can't. As it says right here, listing broker's agreement to find a ready, willing, able buyer or tenant. Owner gives listing broker the exclusive and irrevocable right to, and you check one of these boxes, usually it's sell in this case. So the irrevocable right to sell. So whenever you want to fire an agent, it has to be mutual. They could, and there are companies out there that have gimmicks and lots of things that you'll say, hey, I want to fire you because they're not doing a good job. And they'll go, well, I'm not going to lose the listing, so I'll put it temporarily off market till we expire. Because as you can see, right here, you're going to put dates of how long this agreement goes for, whether it's 3, 6, 9 months, a year, whatever. Let's say you sign something for 6 months. You've gone on the market for like a month or two, let's say 2 months, and then you want to fire the agent, but they don't want to agree to like you firing them. They could say, hey, I'm going to put it temporarily off market. So what that means is they're going to put it temporarily off market for the rest of the 4 months, and you can't list it with anyone else because you're under contract with them. So something to be aware of, and you need to know. So we'll keep going down through here. So now you're going to start seeing a lot of this red stuff, and this is where we're talking about compensation. Obviously, with the lawsuits, and if you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about lawsuits, go watch my other videos. All right, I do a lot of extensive videos on the lawsuits and the settlements and what's happening, what's changing. So please go watch those. But this is all being put in here because of the lawsuits. Anytime real estate has lawsuits, there are major changes in our documents. We get lots more documents, lots more verbiage. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. So this first section right here pretty much says negotiations, I can't talk today. I am so sorry. That compensation is not set by law and not set by any broker or whatever. It is our fee. It is not a set standard number. There is no set standard number. And it says in here that compensation is negotiable. Now, here's the thing. Compensation has always been negotiable. That's just the way it's always been, but there's been this stigma from bad agents that it wasn't the case. So it's one of those that compensation has always and will always be negotiable, and so that's something that you talk with your agent about. And they're going to make you, initial all that stuff. Then we're going to come down here. So this talks about retainer. Now, this was in the old one, but it was worded very differently, and so they just kind of changed it. And so what a retainer is an upfront cost. So a lot of agents will say, hey, you're going to pay me a retainer fee of X amount, whatever that dollar amount is. And then it'll be counted against, a lot of times, in this box right here, shall or shall not. If it says shall, if you check that box, it's, let's say, they get paid X amount of money and you paid X amount in retainer fee. That retainer fee is deducted from the full amount at the end of the transaction. But a lot of people do that up front because they're like, hey, I want to make sure that I don't just lose money on this transaction if you just want to get out of this. So you might start seeing that being used more. I've thought about it. I haven't used it yet, but I have thought about it just because people are starting to back out more because the market's not what they thought and lots of different things like that. So let's keep going down here. They changed, this where it says full purchase price instead of, I think it's the gross sales price. Now it's full purchase price. Now we're going to start talking about additional listing broker compensation. So they took out commissions again, but this first section is unrepresented buyer. So what that means is, let's say I have a listing and someone calls me and says, hey, I want to write the offer myself. I want to do this. They are now an unrepresented buyer. Now, most sellers will think, great, I'm going to save money. I don't have to pay a buyer's agent. Okay, great. Well, this section right here, and sorry, let me scroll up so you can see all of it. Right here, a lot of times, if you're going to do that, the listing agent's going to want more money. Now, it's not going to be, that's a negotiated thing of what that could be, but it could be, a couple of percentages, it could be set dollar amount, whatever it is, of, hey, if I'm going to do this, you're going to have to pay me for it. Because here's the thing that people don't understand. And I am not a fan of unrepresented buyers, and I tell all of my sellers that I don't want to do an unrepresented buyer. I think there's a lot of danger in it because people forget that we had a lot of lawsuits because of unrepresented buyers back in the 80s. And I believe it was in 89 is when buyer agency came around because there were so many lawsuits of, the listing agent was representing both sides and conflict of interest, and then people got upset because they weren't doing what's best for me. And like same thing with unrepresented buyer. Like, listen, if they're unrepresented, I can't help them. And guess what? They could hurt themselves. And unrepresented buyers fall out way more often. I think it's like 30-40% more often than what normal transactions are. And so that's where I'm just not a fan of that. I don't usually tell people to do that, but you need to know what's in there. Then it talks about the buyer broker. And what this is here is the amount that we're willing to pay towards a buyer's agent. Now, as far as I understand, as of right now, that number can be negotiated. So let's say you put in a certain number here, let's say 2.5%, whatever. You put that number in here, you might be able to negotiate that number depending on how the offer comes in, because with the offer, if they get something called the SCA, which is where it's the seller's compensation addendum, it's one of those that if you get that can be negotiated. So something that this number may not be totally set in stone. It could be lower than that, could be higher than that, like typically not higher, but you might be able to negotiate it down. As of right now, that is the understanding. That can always change. So stay tuned. But yeah, so this is the buyer broker section, and it goes on to talk more about, whether it be dual agency, a lot of these things. So something to be reading, because this is a change, because normally in the past, in the listing contract, it showed, all right, we have, here's the full amount. So let's say it was, 6%, whatever, the full amount. And then it was, all right, we're going to divide that, and half of that's going to go to the buyer's agent. Now it's totally separated. They're not combined. They're totally separated because it's coming from the seller. So something to be paying attention to. So a lot of changes there. So definitely something you're going to want to read at length. This is talking about rentals. Again, I'm not going to go into the rental side, but they did change a lot of the verbiage. Same thing with underrepresented tenant, tenant broker compensation. So if you want to read that, you can. And as you see as we go through here, listing, compensation, listing, they changed this throughout this document. Some of this didn't get changed, which is fine. That's good. Listing. They talk about dual agency, which dual agency, people have to understand, like if it's from the same broker. So let's say I'm the listing agent and you want me to represent the buyer's agent, or let's say the buyer's agent is from my broker. There is limited representation in that. And if you have more questions on that, we can talk about that one-on-one. I'm not going to go in depth about that, but something you need to be aware of, there is limited representation when it's the same brokerage. So something to know. That's why a lot of times when I get someone let's say I had somebody approach me that's an unrepresented buyer and we're going to get them an agent, a lot of times I go outside my brokerage with someone I might know to help represent them so they have full representation. And the seller has full representation at that point as well. So something to be aware of. Obviously, you can see listen. They put it all throughout here. So lots of little changes, and then some major changes in this section right here, talking about claims, and they added this section again covering their butts. So Yeah, so that is the listing document. Listing one last time. And that's the changes that have happened. So if you're thinking about buying, or in this case, selling your home, and you have questions about this, let's talk. I would love to talk with you about it. My information's down here. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to help. That's what I do here in the Phoenix area, just trying to build real estate through relationships. So guys, you've been listening to Real Talk Real Estate. I'll catch you next time.